Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Kate, the VP of Growth Marketing here at Moovila. We put on these webinars every single month because we want to help the community educate themselves on project management and really give a spot for professional service leaders and project managers to come and learn, share feedback. We have some of these where we have people on. So if that's something that interests you and you'd like to talk about project management with us, you can just express that interest at kate@moovila.com. You can contact me and we can get you on a list to see if you are fit for any future topics. At the end of today, we will do a survey. That's actually how we decide on some of the topics that we do in future months. We always have a survey so you can give feedback to our speakers, as well as feedback on other project management topics that you may be struggling with at your MSP or interested in covering. So at the end, we'd appreciate it if you could fill out that survey. It'll pop right up when you go to log out. And today we're going to be covering explaining project management's value, how to talk to your leadership team or to your customers about the value that your project management team brings. With us today, you can go to the next slide. We've got some awesome speakers. I'm actually going to go right to left, a little weird. But for those of you who have joined a couple of these, because I see some familiar names in the attendees, as always, we have Louis Bagdonas, our Senior Program Manager of MSPs. Louis came from a manufacturing background, but he's worked in project management in a lot of different type of industries. And today he spends all of his time helping MSPs onboard to Moovila's tool Perfect Project, and also helping develop the software and working with the product team to implement feedback from MSPs and features that they want. So Louis is really our MSP guy, and some of you may or may not, if you're a customer on here today, be lucky enough to have him as your implementation manager. And you can find Louis through that email, or he's also always out on Discord as well. He's an MSP geek in a few other places as well as I. And then I'm really excited to announce, he's super busy, but we got our VP of Operations, Bucky Jove, on this month again. I know when we've had him on in the past, it's been really popular and his webinars have been reshared a lot after. Bucky's background is heavy in project management. I'm probably going to get this wrong. He's a PMP, a Scrum Master. What other ones am I missing, Bucky?
It doesn't matter. There's a bunch of letters.
He's got a CDS receipt of all of the project teams, and he's got an extensive experience of launching PMOs and helping customers launch a PMO or help validate launching project teams and fix their project operations. So I'm really excited to have Bucky on today because he is a busy guy for us. So it's always a treat to hear from him on project points of view. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. And if you guys are looking for the recording, we'll send it out after. You can ask questions either in the direct chat or in the Q&A. I'll be on the backside watching. Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thanks, Kate. No pressure, Bucky.
Yeah, that was quite an intro.
Yeah. So, and real quick, for those of y'all who haven't been with us before, we are with Moovila. We won't spend a lot of time here, but we are solely focused on automating project and resource management. So we spend all day, every day thinking about projects, thinking about project management, going through it with our customers, with our prospective customers, in a lot of different ways and a lot of different engagements. So, and at the end of our short deck and our conversation here today, we will jump into the platform and show a couple of things about how you can help explain that value of project management potentially through the platform. So with that, what we want to start talking about, and this might seem a little bit basic to start, but Bucky and I always do like to start with what's the definition of a project, and what does that mean potentially to your organization, and then why you should manage projects. I know, again, very basic, but we're going to take it all the way back, right? Because no matter what industry, whether it's the high growth of projects we see in the MSP industry, or traditional system implementations, manufacturing, whatever it is, understanding what a project is and why you should manage them and why that's important internally and to your leaders and to your customers is always a struggle, right? So then we'll get into what's the value of project management, how we're going to communicate that value, and then, like we said, we'll start to show you a couple ways that Moovila could help. So to start, what is a project? The first question of project management, if you will. But and we'll talk, really specific to the MSP space. But of course, this is applicable for a number of different industries. But some common definition criteria that we see and that we talk to our partners about is, the first is that it's anything that's outside of your normal scope of services or your normal day-to-day work. So you're an MSP, your goal is to get the managed recurring revenue that you are maintaining your customers' IT systems. Projects are going to be anything that's not covered in that agreement, right? Or we have seen some customers include projects in their agreements, but it's anything out of that day-to-day, resetting passwords, adding new users. It's, hey, we've got a new site that we're starting up. We need you to come in and set up all the IT there, right? That is going to be a project. We also recommend that you look at projects as things that have multiple resources on them. They're going to last multiple days. And then some other common benchmarks that we see are items that cost over a certain number of dollars, or that the overall budgeted hours are over a certain point. So, we see pretty frequently on the MSP side, anything that's an engagement over 10 hours, that's a project. We do see customers break that into some different levels. So, things 10 hours to 25 hours might be a mini project, or we've heard a project. So, and then anything over 25 hours might be, a full-blown project, if you will. At the end of the day, it's going to be a combination of what fits for your organization and what works for your group. And as you're outlining that definition, there's going to be some things that you want to consider. What's the complexity of the plan of the project that you're building versus what is the burden of administration? Now, burden of administration, that is what we call a Bucky's buzzword there. And but it's extremely applicable in all the situations, because one of the other questions we talk about a lot with customers is, what's the right number of tasks in a project, right? How many tasks should I use and how many steps within those tasks should I use, and back and forth. And everybody always says, well, engineers just want one bucket to put all their hours in. And you as a project manager have to help explain, if we do that, there's going to be no way to go back and reconcile when we are over budget and when we need change orders and why we went over budget when we're reviewing this at the end of the project. So what's the complexity of the project, and then what's the burden of administration that works for your team? Other things to consider: organizational structure, how mature are your processes? Are you going to evolve what you call a project over time as you put more process in place? And then also, what are the client's expectations and the coordination that you might need from them? Maybe it's a co-managed client. You've got somebody on site at their location doing the hardware, you're doing all the remote work. So these are all some different things that you need to consider as you're defining what a project is for your organization. Now, Bucky, what did I miss?
Just a couple things that kind of came to mind as you're talking through this. One of the other things is, one of the things that we look at, around common definition, it is anything that's outside of your scope of services. This is a normal day-to-day. But something else we need to think about when we define that project is, and we need to communicate to our customers, and both internally, is, there's a defined start and finish date to this. I know in the MSP space, it's probably not as common, but I'm sure it does happen, is those projects that just kind of linger on. We should, be thinking about projects that we define those endpoints, those bookends to that project, and anything outside of that, it should, always go in and, initiate a change order, or, we need to communicate that change to the plan that, things have changed. So beyond just defining the scope of what's going to be done is when we're going to do it. And we're providing something unique that is probably, generally in the MSP space, is going to, culminate in services down the road. So, there is a clear, defining line between the two. And, the dates are one of the critical things. And then as we talk about that balancing, plan complexity and that burden of administration, that's what I always, I spend a lot of time talking to customers is we always have to look at, balancing value versus how much time we're putting into it. Because it's really easy, especially if you get a very detailed, project manager that comes in, they just want to really plan this project down to the nth degree, every little step and to do as a ticket or task in that project. But like as Lewis said, we'll have an engineer coming in. It's like, I know what I'm doing. Just put it all in one ticket so I can, just have that ticket to put my time. But what it does is, within that, bucketing all that work together can create, hidden factories or risk in your project. So, being logical about how you break down that work and you plan that project is very important as you think through that balance.
Yeah, and a couple things on that one. So back to the first point, and I remember you and I forget where we were, Bucky, but we were talking to a group about same topic. What is a project? And we talked about start and due dates, and a guy raised his hand, and he's like, you shouldn't give due dates on projects. And both you and I were like, what are you talking about? He's like, we never ever give due dates to our customers on projects. And we're like, okay, why? He's like, because we never hit them. And we're like, well, there you go. Right. Yeah. And we see this in the MSP space where people are like, no, we're not giving due dates. And me as previously being a customer that had an MSP and did a lot of automation and IT projects. If my MSP didn't give me due dates, hard stop. No way. I'm not going to pay you money and you just tell me I'll get it done when I get it done. However, in this industry, right, it is pretty common that we see that, and it's leading to, I think, a lot of issues and a lot of heartache. And you touched on it there as well too, where projects just, they linger on and they go on and on and on and on. And a project that is budgeted for 20 hours, that if you've got the plan lined out and you have the resource capacity, you can knock it out in 1, maybe 2 weeks. And we see these things last for months on end, right? Drag on for 3 months. And that's really why we want to help push the industry to give those customers those due dates. And if you are, and we'll get into the managing part, but you've defined those due dates, you've defined that it's a project, and you manage towards it, right? So I guess that I gave myself my own transition there, and it's another really basic question, but again, we want to just try to keep it simple. And so you've defined your projects, why manage them?
Well, it kind of goes to that, I mean, you create a scope and it's, what's the definition of done? You also need to go, when is it going to be done? And one of the things that, I've learned from MSPs, in this space, there's a lot of effort, process, and rigor that goes into the workflows around the services side of it. These are very well defined. They have SLAs attached to them and things like, and those clear handoffs and with communication points back to their customer. But, we come into some organizations and not as much focus or processes put around projects. And why should we do that? Well, I mean, the biggest thing I have learned, I mean, this is a significant part of the business. The services, of course, it's that services side and it's that recurring revenue, but all of those services and all of that recurring revenue starts with a project. If we think about onboarding, if we're doing a migration, if we're doing an upgrade, if we're have a new location coming online, these are all projects, and they are the initiation point for that revenue, that services revenue. So because it's a significant portion of that business and that revenue, as much rigor and process should be put around that. And if we think about that significant portion just internally, there's generally a lot of coordination around resources, different functions, different teams trying to, deliver this to the customer. Also, there's coordination with the customer's resources as well, and their timing and their employees. So we need to put as much planning into that as well, so we know that timeline, so we know when our deadlines are, so we know when to hit them. But that provides, communication both to our internal customers and our resources that are involved that may be, shared across multiple areas of the business, but also, to our customers themselves, so they know what that definition of when this will be done and completed and when to expect it. Going, through that communication with the customer. If we think about new customers that are coming on, and what I'm learning about this space is, MSPs, the kind of core of the customer business is that relationship. Because it is a very competitive market, and you build a long-term relationship with your customer, and they build it with their MSP. It becomes part of their business. So this first interaction with your customer, is really why you should do project management. Making sure that you have clear communication around what's going to be delivered, when it's going to be delivered, and then providing them status as you work through that. And if there are changes, being able to communicate that to them early and not make it a surprise. So those are, just top of mind, a lot of the things that I think why you should manage projects. But the biggest thing around that is, creating that rigor and process and consistency in your delivery. What we're learning from a lot of our customers is beyond it just being a significant part of their business, it's also a growing part of the business. This is where growth is coming from, either in the new services revenue or just, because the environment and the dynamics within technology are changing so fast for customers. So having that same consistency, and optimizing your workflows internally, is going to be important. And, it all starts with spending the time to understand your methodology and your project lifecycle and your processes.
Yeah. And part of that too, and a big change I think we've noticed over the past year or so is and you said the word a couple times, but plan, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest pieces is taking previously, MSPs, you'd win a project, you'd convert it, and it kind of sit there and people would pick it up and work on it. Here you go, as you're going along. And taking a ticket at the beginning of that project that is scope review or build work plan, and taking the time to sit there and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. These are our expectations. To your point, Bucky, you're delivering those timelines to those customers, you're communicating these things internally, but just taking 1 hour before a project starts to build a plan around it so that you have something to manage and you have something to track against, right?
Yeah. Without a plan, I mean, it's that saying, without a plan, you're planning to fail.
Yeah.
And, and the core of that project is that plan. You've talked about having that coordination, that kickoff, communicating that plan to the customer, having that handshake of going through the scope. What are we going to deliver? When are we going to deliver it? But what's also important is having that same type of kickoff internally. So we have the same understanding from the team members on that project of what's expected from them and what's been communicated to the customer. That's just as important to project success.
Yeah. So we've got a definition for a project. We ourselves as project managers, or maybe we're not even the project manager, we call them accidental or deputized project managers. And we see this a lot in the MSP space. It's, maybe the engineers are managing the projects themselves. The dispatchers are managing them, owners, customer service agents. And, this could be a whole nother conversation topic webinar that we go through, but we've had some conversations with people that come to us and they're like, yeah, we realize we need a project management tool. We've just been flying by the seat of our pants. We need something really built for project management. And we'll ask, well, okay, do you have a project manager, and they'll go, we'll know. We'll say, okay, well, who's going to be the champion to make sure that this works and it aligns with your organization? And they'll say, well, we know we need to hire project managers. And I will ask, okay, how many project managers do you think you need? And I've heard 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. And when I hear those 2, 3, 4 numbers, it's a little bit like, so you think you need 4 project managers and you have none right now? You have 0? That's a big jump, right? And it's part of this managing the projects. It's part of it is keeping an eye on, to your point, Bucky, the growth of the professional services revenue within your organization to understand, hey, we need somebody to dedicate towards this, whether it's an internal existing resource, we're going to split off some of their responsibilities so they have a chunk of their time to actually manage projects, or we're going to go out, we're going to hire somebody to do it, right? So all of these things, I think they all go hand in hand, right? As you're defining process, as you're defining projects, you are understanding why you should manage them. You need somebody to manage them, even if it's a clear, like, hey, Bucky, you're going to be the lead on this project, even though you're not our project manager, you're maybe an engineer, making sure there's somebody as a lead, because more often than not, if it's kind of just like, hey, we're all just going to kind of help out and handle it and pick up things here and there, balls get dropped constantly, right?
Well, and that boils, that goes back to, kind of what is a project manager, and we've worked with a lot of organizations where, we have project coordinators, and the traditional definition of a project coordinator is they coordinate, they just manage communication and things like that. I don't care, what you call them, but what really that role needs to be in a project, if they're a project coordinator, project manager, lead engineer, whatever you want, whoever's managing that project, it's the single ringable neck. The definition of that project manager is they're responsible for project success. So regardless of what happens on that project, good, bad, ugly, it's their responsibility to manage that. And that's working with the resources, that's working with the customer, that's reporting up the status internally, communicating any delays, communicating those wins to leadership. I mean, that's important, and that has to, a lot of organizations that have, goes back to that accidental thing of accidentally on project management, not put the rigor around it. You get into situations where it's, everybody's pointing fingers at everybody else. Really that project manager serves as the central point of communication and the central point of making sure that project is successful. And when things do go wrong, a talented project manager will work to get that project back in line. So, as we think through this and, what is a project to us, what is that project manager's role as well? Even if it's a part-time deal, even if they're wearing multiple hats, when they are assigned a project and they're sitting in that seat, it's their responsibility.
Yep. Yeah. And so I'm going to jump to the next slide, and we can talk a little bit more specifically around project management's value. And I think, Bucky, you've done a great job of already covering a lot of that, right? I mean, like we've said, all of this does go hand in hand. It's all interjoined. There's no clear cut difference between the project manager and the value of project management and defining a project. It's all the same. So, I did want to maybe show like a Jerry Maguire clip here, but I figured there's probably some licensing issues. But so, you're internally, you're realizing you need project management. You've got to do things differently. Right? And like we said, you're going to hire somebody, you're going to have a resource, and you're going to get asked the questions by leadership. Hey, we're going to have to spend some money. Show me the money. Why am I doing this? What's the value to do this? And, just some high level items that we've got here that we've talked on is you're going to be able to build timelines and give timelines to your customers with those expectations. And this starts on a project by project basis, right? We've got to have the same process and build our projects the same way. Every project is going to be a little bit different, right? But we're going to need to define, and we've talked a lot about these things in the past, on a task by task basis or a ticket by ticket, whatever you call it. That's the building blocks. That's where it starts. And we got to build our tasks the same way, so that we build our projects that same way, so that we can then manage our portfolio of all those projects the same way. If we've got people doing things different all over the place, it's a nightmare, right? You're going to be looking at each project differently. You're not going to have efficiency gains. I think a lot of the value to me is, and this is because I'm biased and I'm an operationally focused person, and I know you are too, is process drives it all, right? I mean, project management is going to help drive your process and help you be more efficient and be better, right? And that starts with timelines. And once we have our projects built the same way, we have timelines we can forecast. From there, we can then look at overall timelines at a portfolio level of all of our projects, looking at them all the same way, understanding what are the ones we need to focus on, what are the ones that are on track. To your point, Bucky, a good project manager is going to take that, they're going to get it back on track, because things are going to go wrong. That's why we're here. Is day one when a project kicks off, things go wrong. It always happens. With that, you're going to be able to mitigate some risk. You're going to be able to try to see some of these issues before they show up. One thing I've said a lot, because I've had to do it a lot, and I know you have as well too, Bucky, and probably everybody on the call. No matter how many times you have to call a customer and say, hey, you remember when we thought for me, it was manufacturing, right? So, remember when we thought we'd have this manufacturing line up and running, be able to start production for you next week? Oh, well, we figured out that, this happened, so we're going to be 2 months late, right? It never gets easier. It's not a phone call to make. But if you are managing your projects, you can see those issues more proactively, so that you can make that call 3 months in advance. Like, hey, we thought we'd be ready to go in February. We had a part that was delayed. It's not going to come in. We're trying everything we can, but it looks like there's going to be at least a 2-month delay. You've now given your customer 3 months to try to solve for this, right? So managing that risk, being more proactive. I'm going to take a pause there because I've said a lot. Bucky, what else do you want to call out on those 3 things, or anything else before we start talking resource efficiency and customer satisfaction?
Well, the first thing is, I've sat on the other side of the table and I said, why are you telling me a week before this has happened? You didn't know about this? I mean, and that's, having sat on both sides of that table, that's always the toughest thing, the toughest question to answer. Going through all this, we've got, understanding those dates, the portfolio management, risk management, resource efficiency, and all of it contributes to customer satisfaction. These are just, kind of the benefits there, but it all starts with that plan. And going in and planning out your project, understanding how, the work is dependent on each other, understanding what those dates are, so we can, very quickly, look across our portfolio, from a project manager's standpoint. What's my scope? How many projects am I managing? And being able to identify those fires before they start. And then as a business, understanding where those critical items are as we're looking across, 10, 20, 100, hundreds of projects all going on at the same time. Without those plans in place and without that consistency, then we start looking at resource efficiency. I can't tell you how many customers that we've worked with that, the first thing they come in is that they go, man, I've got a project backlog that, I don't even know where to start. We just start on whoever's making the most noise. Without those project plans and those dates, how do you manage those resources? How do you go in and understand your resource commitments? Do you have enough resources? We always have, several people on our team that, have that curse of competence, which I call it, that they'll always take on more, and they're not the ones that are telling you that they're overburdened until they're gone. And then
That's a
find out.
real quick, everybody. That's another Bucky's buzzword, curse of competence. If you're keeping track and writing them down, we're gonna have trading cards maybe that come out, like Pokemon cards. We'll do like a rainbow Charizard or something in there too. So that is curse of competence, but it's a real thing. It is a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We always know who those rock stars are, and the problem is when we don't have a full view of all the work that's going on and how that burden is being balanced across our resources, you always go to that person, and that person will always take on that work until they won't anymore. And then you find out it's going to take, 1.5, 2, maybe even 3 people to replace that person. Especially when you think of, how long it takes to onboard and get somebody, actually valuable in that role and working at 100%. So resources are the critical thing. And because MSPs, the way everyone works, I mean, utilization is critical. So how do we understand, how we're going to fill up and utilize our resources without making sure that we've got accurate dates and accuracy in our project planning? All of this goes back to customer satisfaction. And, and I think this kind of, we're dovetailing into how do we communicate that value. And I'm going to, adjust the bullets here since we're talking about customer satisfaction. With customers, how do you communicate the value of project management? The first thing is in that kickoff call, you come in squared away, saying, hey, this is what we're going to deliver and when we're going to deliver it. Depending on the project and how you run them, here's your project team. I'm your central point of communication. It's professionalism, and especially if it's their first interaction with your company. The other side of it, a lot of it's intrinsic. I guarantee you, every customer that you work with today has great stories about companies they've worked with and horror stories of companies they've worked with. So when they go in and they see you, hitting your dates, delivering what you said you were going to deliver, providing, a central point of communication and communicating that statuses. And if things go wrong, being transparent and getting that information to them quickly, that's one of the, going back to that, hey, we're delayed 3 months and you only found out a week beforehand, that erodes that confidence. And, it keeps going back to, this is, the project manager, when you're dealing with external customers, is it's a customer service position, and it is a direct reflection on your company and your competence. So communicating this value to customers is kind of intrinsic through a well-defined process.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting thing for MSPs around that is a lot of times those project delays are because of the customer, right? It's because you're onboarding a new customer and you need access to their system. You need credentials from their previous MSP, or it's co-managed and you need somebody on site to do something for you, or hey, you've got to let your users know it's going to be down this weekend, right? And the value, if you're managing that project, is you can call that out in that kickoff before you get to that point. Hey, we are forecasting in 3 weeks, we are going to take you down. So in 2 weeks, we've got a milestone in here for you that you need to get this done on your side. And you need to communicate it internally and make sure that it works for you. And customer can look at those dates in real time and go, hey, no, 2 weeks doesn't work. We got an audit going on. Let's push that out a week. That's fine. We can build towards that. We can update our due date. You're doing all of that because you have a plan, because you have a kickoff. You're hitting it up front, because what's going to happen if you don't do that? You're going to get to that point. You're going to call the customer on Thursday and you're going to say, hey, we're taking you down. We're doing that migration, and they're going to say, well, no, we can't do that. And you're like, well, we've already planned it. Our resources, cancel their kid's birthday party. They're going to be there to do it. And you also then at that point, because you're going to have a main point of contact at your customer, you're not just going to be reporting to everybody. It's going to be a, operational person, or like I said, on site on T. You then get put in the position of, do you throw that person under the bus? Right? to their organization. No, you need to manage and maintain that relationship as well. So, being able to call out the customer expectations ahead of time so that you can maintain the relationships with the overall customer and your point of contact there, it's crucial.
That's a very valid point. Managing the customer, without that plan is about impossible.
Yeah. And you said it too. And this ties into resource efficiency. It's, we come in on Monday, whatever customer's screaming the loudest and whatever fires there are, that's the project. We're going to work on that point. And if you've got your plan and you tell your engineer, hey, you are going to work on this project starting next Monday, and I want you to knock it out this week. That's just going to lead to more effective resource utilization, and it's going to lead to better margins. Because if you drag those things out over time and say we work on it the first week of November and then we circle back and the engineer works on it the first week of December, when that engineer goes back in the first week of December with the holiday in the middle of there, they're not going to remember what they did. They're going to have to go back through, they're going to have to read their notes, they're going to have to see what they did. So you've already burned 30 minutes against your budget for that resource to figure out what they did and where they need to start. And then it might be, oh wait, no, we stopped because we never got confirmation that the electrical drop was put in at the new site. Right. It all ties in together, and we see it over and over and over again, that then these resources are just dragged out and these projects are just dragged out for a long time, and your margin's gonna erode. It happens before you know it.
Or you're in firefighting mode all the time, and when you're in firefighting mode, when you start looking at portfolios, it only spreads.
Yeah.
It's a cascading effect.
So, I think for me, all of those ways that you communicate that value to the customer, they're a lot of the same things internally, right? Is you're gonna communicate that, hey, we need to manage our projects so that we don't have engineers dragged all over the place. And honestly, we don't when prospective customers come and talk to us and we start onboarding new customers, they've banged their head against the wall for so long already that they don't need us to help them understand what's the value of project management, right? I mean, you said it, Bucky. It's no way to live fighting fires day in and day out. Your stress builds. You get churn in people. When we're talking to our customers, MSP or whatever industry, they've just been beaten down, right? More often than not, and realize that, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this, and hence that's why there's however many different project management courses and certifications and different studies of methodologies, right?
Yeah, I think, I think if I'm thinking about how we communicate that value internally, I think everybody gets it. But if I, I like to, keep things in kind of simplistic terms.
Yeah.
If I'm communicating down, and let's just say, that's to my project organization or to resources and teams, it's, hey, I'm going to give you good dates. I'm going to give you plenty of time to work on this. You're going to be involved in the planning process. You're going to have an understanding of what your expectations are before we even start. If I'm communicating across functions, if that's engineering or, cyber or whoever, we get, if we've put process and rigor around our project process, defined our templates, things like that, we have agreements. They're involved, and they have stake in that project as well. So they know that as they're managing their resources, I'm going to give you plenty of time, to know when I'm going to need this resource. I'm going to give you concrete dates. If those shift, I'm going to give you, plenty of time to manage that as well. So, you're all kind of working from the same sheet of music. But as you start thinking up into the business, leadership, private equity or whoever's involved, without a plan, we don't have forecasting. So,
yeah,
the simple thing is,
we haven't talked about that at all.
here's the MRR, like, are you guys going to hit it this month? I mean, do you know? I mean, do you know if your project's actually going to complete? You know, I mean, can you recognize that revenue? I don't know, you know. Hey, you need resources. Hey, I need people. Give me the data. You know, who do you need? When do you need them? Those
Let me
types
spend,
of business decisions. You know,
let me spend,
what's your margin on your projects? You know, like being able to forecast that out. So
yeah. And you know, oh, you need those answers? All right, I'm going to take myself down for 2 days and I'm going to go every single project by project. I'm going to build a giant spreadsheet with a lot of colors and a lot of pieces of information and try to get that answer. And I'm going to have to do that for you month over month because we're not doing things consistently. We're not planning the same way. We're not putting that same structure into our projects. It's just, it's rampant. We see it. We see it all the time.
or the worst thing is you get that phone call. What's going on with ABC project? You know, from somebody that never calls you, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, you're taking down the project manager, the project team to see what's going on, you know.
It's I mean, we talk about it all the time, right? And I'm conscious of time here. We're getting to 12:42, so we'll jump into the platform. Bucky and I could probably sit here and talk about it for a long time, especially if you throw us in a diner that's a little gross with some sticky floors. We just go all day. But it's we love doing it. I mean, that's why we're here, right? And that's why we continue to enjoy helping our customers. But it's common issues, right? So if you're here because you're trying to make sure that you can get this point across internally, feel free. We haven't seen any questions come through, but drop them in. Feel free to drop Bucky or I a line. We're more than happy to talk to anybody about it because we know we've been through the heartache ourselves and the pain and the stress and the stomach ulcers and all the other, you know, the hair loss. Thankfully, the camera's on the front side for me here, but it's common. And so don't feel discouraged, right? If you're having a hard time getting that point across internally, everybody does. Or everybody goes through the same challenges. So, Bucky, any other points or Bucky's buzzwords you want to drop before we jump into the platform for a short little demo?
No, I'm sure I'll drop a few more if we get some questions.
Okay, got it. All right, so we're going to jump into Moovila. I'm not sure, you know, how many of the folks on the call here today are familiar with the platform. So not going to go too much into just general orientation, but I'm going to talk about a couple of things that are specific to Moovila that help you build that plan consistently, get that process in place so that we can roll those tickets to projects, those projects to a portfolio, so we can manage top down, bottom up, whichever way that we need to go. So what we're looking at here is a snapshot of a project portfolio. So each of these lines here are going to be a project in our portfolio. We've got some data associated with each project on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, this is going to be a really helpful visual that Moovila is going to update for you and monitor 24/7. So this is a snapshot of a timeline of your project. And essentially, you can clearly see the starting point of each of these projects. You can see where's the due date on each of these projects. And then what Moovila does is it's reviewing the performance of that project. It's forecasting, are we forecasted to finish this project 4 days early, 2 days early, 19 days early, or are we forecasting late, 7 days late, 13 days late? Do we have milestones that are forecasted late along the way? Do we have milestones that are upcoming on that project? So because all of these plans were built consistently, we can look at this at a high level. And there's a number of things that go into Moovila, but there's one piece about the platform that is core to what we are doing, core to the automation, core to the heart of Moovila, and that's what we call our critical path engine. So we make it really easy to build your project plans with dependencies and dates and durations and lead and lag and all those technical terms. But then with that structure that you've built, and you can put that in your templates, so it translates to your projects, of course, easily, so you don't have to do it every time. We are then going to forecast the start and due date of every single piece of work in that project throughout the life cycle of it. And with that, we can then provide you these forecasted dates. So the value here of managing those projects and building those plans consistently is I can come in and I can look at my projects, and then in unison with that critical path engine, we have our RPAX score, which you can think about like a credit score or a health score for your project. And essentially, it's going to grade you on, have you built a good plan? Are you consistent with your process? And then how are you performing on that project? So if you build a good plan and you start, you're going to be up in the green. As soon as that project gets going, and as soon as work isn't getting done and it's late, that score is going to start to drop for you in real time. And Moovila does this for you 24/7, 365. So PMs or dispatch or whoever's that lead can jump in the morning. They can look at this portfolio and say, yep, these projects still in progress, still in the green. You might want to go look at this Office 365 migration, but I really need to focus on these 4 projects down here below because they have gone off the rails. I'm forecasting late on these 2 here. And just based on the overall timelines, these look to be pretty large projects. So before I drill into a project there and look at that, Bucky, what do you?
Yeah, one note I want to make, because I think we forget to talk about it, is, and you look at this view, I mean, this is real or near time,
Yeah.
So we're constantly doing that. I know Lewis had mentioned doing that math on the back end, but and providing you that real-time information. But the other thing to remember too is through our native built integrations to your PSA, it's bringing in all that status and updating that plan. So you have that kind of single pane of glass over your whole portfolio and what's going on with it right now.
Yeah, and even down to the point where, hey, it's 4:00 on a Friday. You had a ticket that was due today. It hasn't been marked complete. There's been no update to the ticket. It's got, 10 budgeted hours on it. Moovila, once you cross that threshold of, hey, there's only 9 hours until 9 business hours, not just hours in the day, right? So again, looking at holidays, looking at weekends, there's 9 business hours until the due date of this ticket, this task. Moovila is going to start throwing red flags right away, right? And that score is going to keep dropping once we get to 8 hours and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4 and 3. So that, to Bucky's point, in real time, when things are going off the rails, right? Hey, you haven't completed this. Now, maybe we should be a little bit lenient for our engineers. We're going to wait until tomorrow morning and hit them on it. But maybe that's a quick nudge, like, hey, haven't seen any time put against this ticket yet. It's due today. We thought it would take 10 hours. All good. You need any help on this one? So down to the, I say the hour, but really it is down to the minute. So Bucky, before I jump into a project, anything else you want to add here at the portfolio level?
No, besides, this is my favorite view.
It's for even I know we look at it all day every day, but even if you don't, you can take a quick glance at this. You've got priorities, you've got favorites, you've got the score, you've got the due. You can quickly look at this and be like, all right, I'm good. What, this doesn't look right. I need to pay attention to these things, whatever they are, right? So let's drill into one of these projects that has a bad score. And in Moovila, I mentioned our critical path engine is at the core of what we do. And this is our critical path view. So for those of you who have taken a stack of sticky notes and a whiteboard, and you've put all those sticky notes on that whiteboard, and you've drawn the arrows between them, and everybody looks at it, you agree to it, that's your plan. No fault to that. That is amazing. You are planning, you are project managing, that is awesome. But then you close the door and you hope that the cleaning people don't come in and take those sticky notes down at the end of the day, and then you lose your whole plan, right? So in Moovila, we give you the ability to build those plans and your templates so you can apply them in the same way to all your projects. Then we take all that information and we visualize that for you. And by doing that and seeing this is where we can automate and in real time forecast performance and scores against this project. And because we've reviewed this plan with our internal teams, we've reviewed it with our customers, we've put in the dependencies, the work estimates, the durations of based on the best information we had at the time, right? And again, we know things are going to go wrong, so we make it easy to try to get these projects back on track when things go wrong. But I can look at this 50 plus ticket project and see, okay, I think I've got a problem right here. It's highlighted in red for me. So Moovila is going to help you as a project manager or project lead or coordinator see, oh, this is the ticket that I need to focus in on. And what we can see here is that, hey, we expected the equipment to be delivered on 10/22 so that we could get on site and we could start this network upgrade. It has not been delivered, right? And then Moovila will show you the impacts to every single downstream piece of work that is dependent on that point. So now we can see that, hey, because this was due earlier this week on the 22nd, today's the 25th, it's the earliest we'd be able to complete this. Here's the impact it has to everything else, right? We'd be forecasted now to finish this thing up instead of finishing it on Christmas Day, because we do not give our fake demo people any days off. They work all holidays. We're very, very hard to work for. You know, we're now going to be forecasting towards New Year's Eve. And to Bucky's point earlier, now if I'm a PM and I'm looking at this project final billing and it was forecasted to Christmas Eve, I'm forecasted to now the 27th of December. In my head, quickly, I'm going, okay, that's going to be a problem if this is delayed by 2 more days, because then it's going to be a holiday. Accounting's not going to be able to bill. That revenue is not going to be able to hit our P&L for the end of the year. This is a $27,000 project. I'm going to miss my overall budget for professional services for the year if this thing slides into January, right? So because you've built that plan, you've managed this project, you can catch that now here on October 25th, 2 months ahead of the fact. I got to be honest. I know this is demo and it's rolling forward. That like worked out perfectly for me.
Yeah, that did work out perfectly. I was going to say something to you afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, but that's the reality. And to one of Bucky's earlier point about project services growing in the industry, more often than not, we hear that, hey, it's towards the end of the month, and hey, we haven't hit our revenue number for this month because this, that, or the other. Are there any other projects you can push through? Hey, is there anything else that we can get done and we can build a client for so that we can hit our revenue numbers? So, I mean, insights like this, it's invaluable, right? If you're not planning your projects, if you're not managing your projects, I'm going to say absolutely no way. Maybe there's a 5% chance you could catch this if you didn't have a plan for your project and you weren't managing it on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis.
The only way that usually works is the only thing you're working on is that project, and the only thing your team is working on is that project.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that doesn't happen.
That's the reality in it for MSPs.
Yeah, it does not happen. Yeah, we should do some sort of analysis and see what's the average number of projects an engineer is working on at any given time, and it's I would say it's probably no less than 5 from what I've seen. I mean, they're all, and then PMs are upwards of 20 projects at once, right?
20, 30, 40, I've even seen 50. So
50, yeah, 60. So with 5 minutes left, again, any questions y'all want to drop in, or if you want to drop us a line after the fact, we're more than happy to talk through anything and troubleshoot and just shoot ideas off each other. But
so
just one, yeah, go ahead, Bucky.
Well, I wanted to make sure, Louis, I mean, showing this network diagram, showing the process flow of the project and the flow of work, we're all used to that Gantt chart. And anybody that's a trained project manager, we're used to this network diagram. But, as we start overlaying work, this Gantt chart becomes difficult to manage because the dependencies and how everything interacts can become a spider web, and tracking the actual flow of work can be a challenge. The other thing I just wanted you to flip over to real quick, and I didn't want to miss this for those, that haven't seen the platform before, we love that critical path view because it gives you the flow of work, but we can go into that power grid, and this is going to be, where that day-to-day is managed. And, this is that spreadsheet format, tab, click, we can add in columns, and you can get down to, seeing on a ticket by ticket basis, what that, what's been, you know, assigned, scheduled, what's late, you know, how are we looking, you know, budget versus actual, all of those calculations, you know, down to that level. And, you know, one of the things that we really focus on at Moovila is it's all about how you plan that project, because that's the core that drives everything up. And we take it down to that molecular level, that ticket or task level within the platform.
Yep. Yeah, great call out. One of my favorite things is that, you know, compared to the PSAs, where typically, all right, I'm managing this project, what's going on with this? Oh, I need to update this ticket. You've got to open the ticket. And sure, we give you the ability to do that. That's great. But you can update anything you need on any of these from this Power Grid view. So you can run this like a spreadsheet. You can operate a lot faster. You can bulk update things. Oh, you know what? I want to reassign all this work to Kyle. Let me put this to him. Let me copy this, shift click all the way down here, paste. It's the efficiency gains for project managers in the Power Grid view, instead of having to open each ticket and then update it. And I understand there you can do some updates in work plan views in PSAs, but I don't think anybody would probably argue with me that it is not the most enjoyable experience, right? And it also, you know, you change things in some places like that, it doesn't always trigger saves, and people come in and overwrite things. So, you know, this we've got a lot of different views, right? The Gantt view, the critical path, the Power Grid view. It makes a project manager's job, looking for the right terminology here. It makes it easier. It makes it more effective. It helps you forecast things. I mean, it really does allow you to effectively manage a number of projects across multiple resources, across categories, across types, across customers. You know, so
The force multiplier.
but it really is. I mean, it's awesome in the simplest way to put it. So, you know, we came here under 2 minutes early. I'm just making sure, Kate, you're popping on here. We didn't miss anything. No questions or anything there.
No, I didn't see any questions come in. If anyone wants to drop any in, we can grab them real quick. But I put in the right side in the comment section, if you'd like to do like a click-by-click tour. It's not the exact same experience as like what they're showing. It's more like walking through the different features. But if you'd like to see that, and then we've also got our demo page. You can also book a demo from the tour page. But thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have the survey at the end, and we try to do these monthly. So just keep an eye out for a future one. And we appreciate you guys joining. And thank you, Bucky and Lewis, for dropping all the knowledge today.
Thanks everyone for attending, and have a good weekend.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.